Ferrari gave their all in the tests in Bahrain, but certainly some balance issues compromised the performance of the SF25 and also dampened the excitement of Lewis Hamilton's arrival, which was there at the beginning of the season. The SF25 did not fully satisfy the technicians, pilots, but why does Australia represent a great opportunity? In today's video, we go to answer this question. Let's look at Ferrari's new fund, but not only that, we also need to look at the dispute between Ferrari and Cardile and also how the Aston Martin project will develop in the coming years because there are some news about it. Before we start, as always, support with a like, and now let's look at everything in detail. The fact that the Ferrari SF25 did not fully satisfy everyone right away is not necessarily a negative sign. In fact, Ferrari completed the test program totaling 382 laps and over 1,285 miles. Kilometers. Now the focus shifts to data analysis to improve the correlation between simulations and track. Unlike Red Bull, which has refined its RB21 without revolutionizing the aerodynamic concept, Ferrari has chosen a bolder path by introducing innovative technical solutions. This is inevitable. It involves a more complex study phase, but could prove advantageous in the long run, and for this very reason, an opportunity to overturn the hierarchies will already be in Australia. In fact, starting the season in Melbourne instead of Bahrain could favor Ferrari. Last year, even without shining in the tests, the red team won in Melbourne with a double, also taking advantage of Max Verstappen's withdrawal. The Albert Park City circuit is atypical and could mitigate the balance problems of the SF25s. Furthermore, Ferrari will test the C5 compound for the first time, which is the softest and could better adapt to the single-seater. With the support of the updated simulator and last year's experience, Ferrari has a great opportunity to start the season on the right foot and fight for victory right away. Many of you have asked, Rastro, why wasn't Ferrari convinced by the Bahrain tests? There are several reasons, but one of them is also that behind these seemingly uncertain results is the strategy wanted by technical director Loic Serra, who subjected the car to a targeted stress test. What does it consist of? Essentially, they carried out extreme tests to better understand the new suspension. And one of the most analyzed aspects was precisely the rear of the single-seater, equipped with an improved pull rod suspension. The team conducted a series of tests to understand the integration with the front suspension, which was also revolutionized with the transition to pull rod. According to observations, the SF25 showed a solid front capable of fitting well into the curve without losing the apex. In short, the Bahrain one seems to have been a well-studied technical hide and seek. Ferrari ran with a medium-low load setup, opting for a rear wing with a marked AV profile to maximize aerodynamic efficiency. This choice, unusual for a circuit like Bahrain, deliberately put the car's rear end in difficulty, highlighting some issues in long-duration curve transients. In a video published by Ferrari, an interesting detail was revealed. In fact, in the images it is seen that the SF25 has a different wing, more similar to that of the SF24, capable of ensuring greater load and stability at the rear. This suggests that in Maranello, they deliberately adopted extreme configurations in the tests to collect fundamental data in view of the Melbourne GP, where a less loaded wing could turn out to be the winning weapon. So what should we expect from the debut in Australia? If the tests have left doubts about the real performance of the SF25, the first race of the season could reveal a clearer picture. With more conservative settings and an aerodynamic configuration more suited to the Melbourne City circuit, Ferrari could show that it has much more potential than what was seen in Bahrain. In fact, be aware that all the teams hid in the tests in Bahrain, but especially Ferrari, which also did a stress test on the suspensions by stressing the rear anti-squat by also mounting a rear one more discharge, therefore not suitable for Bahrain. To see what the limits of the single-seater are, and this was strongly wanted by the technical director Loic Serra, who is Ferrari's new acquisition. Also wanted by Vasseur, so it's not necessarily negative, the fact that Ferrari didn't perform very well in the tests, especially on race pace, but rather we must think that Ferrari is a bit hidden to then bring out the best in Melbourne, which will be a great opportunity for the red. And we also know this because the revolutionary bottom of Ferrari gives so much load to the red, and Ferrari has made important changes to the bottom of the SF25 for this year's World Championship. This component is crucial for ground effect single-seaters, but its efficiency depends on the ability to reduce sensitivity to changes in height from the ground. To achieve this result, each team adopts different solutions in terms of suspensions and kinematics. Ferrari and Red Bull have chosen contrasting approaches to managing the bottom of their cars. The SF25 uses softer suspensions, allowing for greater variations in the characteristic angles of the bottom, while the RB21 follows a more rigid approach. The Milton Keynes team tried to advance in the aerodynamic center of pressure to reduce the load on the rear and improve the stability of the front axle. But the tests in Bahrain did not confirm the effectiveness of this choice. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the bottom of Ferrari appears more stable. Ferrari has worked on a base that favors the stability of the aerodynamic flow, allowing a more controlled rise of the fluid on the diffuser ramp. And this design goes hand in hand with a softer rear suspension and a higher degree of squat. A 2022 feature has made Italian single-seater cars especially effective in acceleration. Red Bull, on the other hand, has adopted a more aggressive approach with a bottom that generates a more pronounced depression peak but which is more unstable, so who will be right? The Ferrari SF25 seems to aim for a more predictable and easy-to-operate configuration, while Red Bull has taken further risks to gain more mechanical grip. The Melbourne GP will be the first real test to understand which philosophy will pay off more in the long run. That's why pay attention to Ferrari in Melbourne. However, the circuit of Australia we know is not so indicative for the season, because it is an atypical circuit is already a citizen. Then you reach high peak speeds. There are many straights or many curves that are faced in full, and there are few curves from restart. In fact, attention to the third sector of Australia, which will be the most driven. And from the tests in Bahrain, we understood another aspect, both of McLaren and Ferrari. Among the main verdicts, McLaren has confirmed that the MCL39 is currently the most effective car, especially for the race pace in the long run. Unlike Ferrari, walking single-seater did not require particular setup adaptations to extract the performance, confirming a consolidated and extreme project without conceptual upheavals. Ferrari, with the pull rod mounted at the front, needs a setting point from a more dedicated car, requiring a new integration between aerodynamic and dynamic setup. For this reason, it is premature to draw definitive conclusions on the potential of the SF25, which is still in the refinement phase. Despite the balance problems, Leclerc and Hamilton have highlighted some positive aspects. The Monegasque had more difficulty in bringing speed into the corner compared to his teammate, but this is a problem that can be solved with better optimization of the setup. In short, the SF25 has shown to have good times without particular difficulties in qualifying configuration, while the tire degradation seems already better compared to the SF24. This suggests that the performances are there, even if partially hidden by the tests. Also thanks to the stress test carried out on the XR during the tests in Bahrain. The data collected combined with the work at the simulator should allow to refine the setting. A point of the car in view of Melbourne. Given these elements, it is normal that the SF25 needs a period of adaptation. It would have been abnormal if the car had shown immediately a perfect behavior. In short, the Australian GP will be an important test because the track conditions and softer compounds could help Ferrari show its true potential, respond to skeptics. In short, the new Ferrari background and also the softer suspensions compared to those of the Red Bull, also thanks to the softer tires that we will see in Australia, will give a hand to the Ferrari LSF25. That's why I want to tell you, let's wait for the first race to effectively evaluate the potential of Ferrari, also because there is a lot of work at the Maranello simulator to try to optimize the setup as best as possible in view of the first race. But I want to focus now on the clash between Ferrari and Cardile because there are updates on this. In fact, the silence around the affair of Enrico Cardile has been broken. The former technical director of Ferrari, who resigned on July 8, 2024, has recently been blocked by the Modena prosecutor's office in his move to Aston Martin. But what is the reason? The main reason is the violation of the gardening leave period, which prevents high-level technicians from working for a competing team for a certain period after the end of the relationship with the previous team. And this is a suspicious goodbye, and Adrian Newey's arrival is also missing. When Cardile left Ferrari, speculation was about a possible arrival of Adrian Newey in Maranello. However, the British designer instead signed for Aston Martin, making it clear that the departure of the Italian engineer was not related to a possible demotion of his. Now, with the official go-ahead for Newey to work on the Aston Martin 2026 project, it has emerged that Ferrari has blocked Cardile, accusing him of starting to collaborate with the new team before the end of his contractual obligation. According to the Modena prosecutor's office, Cardile would have violated the non-competition agreement, causing Ferrari irreparable harm and allowing Aston Martin to gain an unjustified competitive advantage. The issue raises doubts. How is it possible that Aston Martin, a team experienced in contractual dynamics as demonstrated in the case of Dan Fellows with Red Bull, ignored the time limits imposed by the gardening leave? How was it determined that Cardile was already working with the new team? This case may conceal another one. In fact, behind the dispute there could be more than a simple violation of the gardening leave. The real issue could be the risk of an exchange of confidential information between Ferrari and Aston Martin. It's unlikely that it would come to such a clear legal action just over a matter of timing.
With Cardile
blocked until July 18th, 2025, Aston Martin finds itself without a key element for much of the development of the 2026 car. This delay could jeopardize work on the future single-seater while Ferrari tries to protect its own technical know-how. In short, the coming weeks could bring new developments on a case that is proving to be more complex than expected. Ferrari wants to protect its technical know-how. For 2026, Enrico Cardile was in charge of the SF24, SF23, and F175, most of Ferrari's ground effect cars. He has technical knowledge and understanding of Ferrari's procedures that could benefit Aston Martin. Ferrari tried to protect its know-how and accused Cardile of starting work for Aston Martin earlier than allowed.
Martin, for
this reason, the Modena prosecutor's office has blocked him until July 18th, 2025. This is a significant benefit for Ferrari, as it will hinder Aston Martin's development in the coming years. Because without a trusted technical director, the Green One will struggle to develop its own single-seater. Adrian Newey is behind the team, but a key figure is still missing.
Cardile and
Aston Martin has a targeted strategy in mind to save wind tunnel hours to dedicate them to those used by Adrian Newey. In fact, after the preseason tests in Bahrain, the teams have entered the analysis phase to optimize their single-seater in view of the Australian GP. Aston Martin, however, has adopted a different strategy compared to the main competitors, focusing more on the future than on the immediate performance of the AMR25. Aston Martin's tests were unsatisfactory as anticipated. Aston Martin designed the MR25 with a clear goal to improve drivability for drivers and engineers without, however, investing significant resources in the development of this car. Not by chance, Fernando Alonso emphasized how the new single-seater is fundamentally very similar to the MR24 with chassis, engine, suspensions and transmissions unchanged, while the changes are focused on aerodynamics. Despite an improvement in data correlation between wind tunnel and track, the MR25 has not impressed in tests, so much so that it is currently placed between 8th and 9th place on the starting grid. The Silverstone team decided to save hours in the wind tunnel in the early stages of the season, to take advantage of them when Adrian Newey will be fully operational. This choice will allow to focus efforts on the 2026 project when the new regulation will revolutionize Formula 1. Aston Martin is also finalizing the calibration of its new wind tunnel, which will be fully operational within this
month. Pedro
De La Rosa has confirmed that the times are in line with the forecasts and that the goal is to provide Newey with the best possible working conditions. In short, Newey is coming, but Cardile remains stuck. While Newey has officially started his new adventure at Aston Martin, Enrico Cardile will have to wait until July before joining the team due to the block imposed by Ferrari through the Modena court.
This delay
could limit the contribution of the Italian engineer on the 2026 project, while Newey will be able to start working in advance on the team's future. This is a risky but calculated choice. Aston Martin has clearly bet everything on the long term, accepting a potentially complicated 2025 season in exchange for greater competitiveness in 2026. The new wind tunnel and the arrival of Newey are key elements of this strategy. It remains to be seen whether this approach will pay off or if the team risks finding itself too far behind in the short term. So have Aston Martin's goals been moved to 2027? Despite the arrival of Newey and the acquisition of the Honda power unit, current difficulties suggest that Aston Martin may not be immediately competitive even in 2026. The team is heavily investing in infrastructure, but the lack of a cohesive organization and the delay in the start of the wind tunnel could shift the real ambitions of victory to 2027. Meanwhile, the 2025 season could prove to be complicated. The MR25 has potential, but without significant evolution, it risks remaining in the lower part of the grid, and it will be interesting to see if the team will succeed. To close the gap in upcoming races or focus entirely on the 2026 technical revolution. Adrian Newey's arrival means Aston Martin should focus on 2026, but not at the expense of sacrificing too much in 2025. Is not such a wise choice, because the opponents gain so much ground and you stay so far behind. compared to the top teams. It's a risky strategy to throw everything into next year, but this is what Aston Martin wants to do at the moment. The soon-to-be-ready wind tunnel and the arrival of Adrian Newey and Enrico Cardile are also contributing factors, who will be influential over the course of this season for the years to come. But there's also the matter of Honda, which will be the only engine supplier. For Aston Martin, with the introduction of new technical regulations in 2026, the power units of the single-seaters will undergo significant changes. Honda, set to return as Aston Martin's official supplier, has confirmed the development of its power unit has reached a considerable stage while facing significant challenges. The 2026 power unit will maintain the V6 turbo, but without the thermal energy recovery system, the motor generator unit,
considered
too expensive and complex. The power will instead be balanced at 50% between the internal combustion engine and the electric motor MGUK, making the engine more similar to a range extender. From 2026, the use of 100% sustainable fuel will also be mandatory, adding an additional challenge.
technical after
Having withdrawn from Formula 1 in 2021 and announced its return in 2023, Honda had to make up the gap with the manufacturers who continued to develop the new power units without interruption. Koji Watanabe, president of Honda Racing Corporation, admitted that the path has not been simple, while Tetsushi Kakuda, head of HRC's Formula 1 project, highlighted the difficulties related to managing combustion with the new fuels. Honda's goal is to obtain homologation of the power units by February 2026, working until the last moment to optimize performance. From January 1st, 2025 F1 teams began aerodynamic development for 2026, and Honda is integrating its power unit with the Aston Martin chassis. The two parties are coordinating the schedule to finalize the main components before homologation. In the meantime, Honda has announced the creation of HRC UK, a new headquarters in Milton Keynes, which is a sign of the Japanese brand's desire to strengthen its presence in Europe and consolidate its collaboration with Aston Martin for future challenges. Certainly, having a dedicated engine manufacturer for Aston Martin will be an advantage, but it is also true that Honda has not been working completely independently since 2021, when it decided to leave Red Bull, who took over the engine part of their team with Red Bull powertrains. And so it will be a completely revolutionized new challenge, because the engine will completely change for 2026, not only for Aston Martin, but also for Honda. So from my point of view, even if they will have the dream team, there will be a period of adjustment for Aston
Martin first,
to find the performance that Lawrence wants.
Stroll last.
The topic is control tests on flexible wings. Be aware that flexible wings are under scrutiny and will face more rigorous tests and new control cameras. The 2025 Formula 1 season has not yet begun, but technical controversies have already emerged. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has decided to step up checks on flexible wings, responding to reports of possible irregularities that emerged in the tests in Bahrain. Starting from the Australian GP, new checks for the rear wing will come into effect, followed by stricter controls on the front wings in Spain. We saw it even yesterday. Red Bull has accused several teams of having excessive flexion of the rear wing,
and the
Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile responds with new measures. During the tests, Red Bull's technical director, Pierre Rocher, pointed the finger at Ferrari and McLaren, accusing them of exploiting a mini drag reduction system effect through the rear wing, as we also saw last year with McLaren in Baku and in some previous races. Mercedes has also been closely observed, showing a certain degree of flexion of the same component and to avoid further controversies. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has sent an official request to the teams to mount new cameras focused on the rear wing. The goal is to verify any deformations and prevent illegal solutions. Can circumvent the current static tests. In short, starting from the first GP of the season, checks on the flexion of the rear wings will be stricter. In addition, specific tests will be introduced on the bean wing, an aerodynamic element located above the diffuser and below the rear wing. And according to Article 3.15.12b of the technical regulations, the bean wing will be subjected to a perpendicular load of 150 N, and its deflection should not exceed 0.8 degrees. This test, considered particularly restrictive, aims to limit the aerodynamic deformations that can alter the balance of the car at high speed. The goal for the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile is to avoid a new wing war. Following last year's controversies that led teams to invest heavily in aerodynamic flexibility, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile aims to avoid such situations in the future. The new measures aim to eliminate any gray area and ensure greater fairness among the teams. It remains to be seen how the teams will react to these changes and whether some single-seaters will have to make modifications before hitting the track in Melbourne. As mentioned earlier, the battle over flexible wings has only just started. And we hope that it doesn't continue throughout the season because honestly, we're tired of this battle over flexible wings. We want to see more action on the track, more freedom for the teams. If there are rules, they must be respected, that's for sure. But there can't be a controversy at every race over a minimal degree of wing flex, because otherwise we'll never get out of this technical regulation. Leave your opinion in the comments. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos on the channel. Every day I tell you all the news about Formula 1 and specifically about Ferrari. Check out the related videos and see you in the next one from Rastaduto.